Another Friday night, another week is behind us. It's PJ Net Live on Friday night. We let our hair down, Hazards 4, spin some great tunes that take you back, whether you're 60, 50, 40, or 30. He's got some stuff for you. It's been a very relaxing night. We look forward to more tunes a little bit later on, but for right now, we need to hear from Refugee from the, well, in memorial or in honorarium of Refugee. We have our Bayou background installed, the Cajun Man. And here he is. He hasn't shaven today, I noticed, but or yesterday or the day before, it looks like to me. We're going to turn down the resolution, you know. You look fine. All right, so we're going to get, you got a new phone a week ago. We're going to be getting new internet coming up in the near future. So, you know, we're just pouring.
Hopefully I won't have to have this continuing traveling bunker situation.
Yeah.
Which adds a lot of stress to the situation and a lot of difficulty.
I get it. Well, it's been I would say an uneventful week in the sense that there's really only been one event that has dominated the news cycle, and I presume that you are familiar with the crucifixion of the whatever it is. What happened? Nothing.
Mark, nothing. But I'm going to tell you something that became clear. I never thought I was going to feel sorry for Mueller, but I do. I feel sorry for him. And some people have checked me on this, and they've said, oh, come on, you can't feel sorry for Mueller. You can't sign for him. But I'll tell you what was clear when I looked at the hearings. First of all, I didn't hate Mueller in the past. Mueller wasn't one of my favorite people in the world, but he's basically one of those lifelong, moderately conservative establishment Republican, prosecutorial, good management type guys. Okay, that's what he is. You know, he's not a conservative revolutionary. He probably wasn't a big fan of Trump, but he wasn't the devil either. And I had been, quite honestly, kind of disappointed in him and kind of confused when he seemed to hire nothing but liberal Democrats who had been Hillary supporters to work on that case and some of the direction that it had gone. But I'll tell you, it was clear when you looked at his testimony. It was the saddest thing I had seen since Admiral Stockdale appeared in the debates with Ross Perot.
Yeah.
You saw a man who is in early senility. Mm-hmm. You saw a man who has slowed down a tremendous amount. You saw a man who did not write that report. At times it looked like he hadn't even read the report, but I just don't think he fully comprehended the report. And I now just see him as somebody who got used. As somebody that got used as, hey, this guy was a Republican with a good reputation, so let's use him as the figurehead. He was used by the swamp. And of course, that means he wasn't just used by Democrats, but it means that establishment Republican figures within government were a part of this, and we're a part of saying, yeah, Mueller's the guy. He'll put the fair Republican stamp of approval on this thing. He's the guy the senators respect, and so on and so forth. And then we'll just run roughshod because he's not going to be able to keep us from doing it, and we're just going to be running this whole thing from behind the scenes. I haven't seen an independent journalist, a moderate journalist, a moderate political contributor who thought that this week's hearings did anything to hurt Trump. They all thought it helped Trump. Of course, you expect the conservatives to always say that, but the middle of the road people, and even some of the liberals were telling the truth. Okay. Now, of course, the ones that are just dyed-wool are like, oh, this proves Trump has to be impeached.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. But some of the basic questions that Mueller couldn't answer showed, okay, this guy has slept. This guy's not what he once was in life. He's an old man. And he should be sitting on a rocking chair on his front porch visiting with grandchildren. And, I would almost call it elder abuse. I really would. And some people think who think he's a little senile still think I'm being too soft on the guy. But I just don't believe in treating people like he's been treated.
Well, I wonder, First of all, your comparison with Admiral Stockdale, I think, is an excellent one. The other one that came to my mind is Dick Clark at some of the New Year's things. It's really a shame because I don't have any love or hate for the man one way or the other, but I do have respect and dignity for our seniors. I wonder how many years the last 2 years has put on him.
Right, right. You know, you really do have to wonder about that. But that was, looking at that was quite honestly just, it made me sad. And of course, Ross Perot just died in the last week as well. Mm-hmm. And that's probably a part of what made my brain make that Admiral Stockdale connection, was the death of Ross Perot, who, guy I didn't always agree with, guy I didn't vote for, guy who made me angry sometimes, but dignified guy who loved his country. And
he's the best thing that ever happened to Jimmy Carter.
yes. And so that was interesting to watch over the course of the week.
Some of the mainstream media, I mean CNN, I mean some of the more liberal outlets, they were declaring it a disaster, and that's pretty bad. Of course, the Republicans are going to say it was a great day, but when the news on that side of the scales said it was just the D word, I mean disaster. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I didn't watch much of it. I just saw little sound bites from it, but it seemed to me, he kept asking for the page number, and I think part of it is because, well, in a court proceeding, you want to be clear. You don't want to misspeak. But right. I thought, you did write it, didn't you? I mean, or oversaw it at the very least. And he seemed to be totally disconnected from the content of the report.
He was. It reminded me, other than the Stockdale thing, and this is a little personal, but it reminded me of my dad late in his life. My dad, a great guy, and one of the most organized, together, most intelligent men I ever knew in my life. But, that last year of his life, he couldn't balance his checkbook. Yeah. And that last year of his life, helping him handle some of his business and seeing him get that just made a great big sound or not. It made a big sound in my ear. Something that just happened. But I turned it off. So it reminded me of that. But Mark, who's an interesting American? Total topic change at this point. You familiar with Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy?
Yeah, his name is coming up more and more often.
You're familiar with what he is openly speculating about doing?
I think he's going to take on that crazy girl from Minnesota. Did I tell you? And you changed the topic, so I'm going to change it, and we'll come back to yours. As you know, I have publicly stated, please, don't reply to a tweet. It's a trap. They're trying to ensnare you. There's no point. But this week, I actually replied to a tweet. Omar tweeted, college degree, $20,000 in debt, 2 jobs, this, constant phone calls from debt collectors. This is the realities Americans face day by day, and the reason we must cancel student loan debt. Well, I went apoplectic. I just thought, and I replied back that I have faced those realities, but never did I expect the lender, or I didn't blame the lender for expecting to be repaid. I was finally able to stop the phone calls because I paid the debt. Mm-hmm. Roger, I got like 61 I mean, it was like it was like my tweet was visible for the first time in years. Wow. And furthermore, here's the thing, and I got to do some more research on this, but I started reading other replies. They were all negative, like mine. They were all in the same tone. I thought, well, come on, somebody's got to agree. And so I thought, well, wait a minute, how can this be? there's absolutely no one that agrees with her. I mean, there's got to be some liberals out there somewhere. So then I opened up a second browser, not logged into Twitter.
Okay.
So I was not known what identity I was, and I put the replies side by side, and they do not match up, sir.
Now, isn't that interesting? So you're saying that the
Yes.
Coach Prasek account, the known shadow banned conservative,
Right. That has a reputation for conservatism.
Runner of Russian bots who helped to steal this election for Donald Trump.
The wealthy Floridian, suckering people into,
You're telling me that man does not see the same thing on Twitter as just a random person who's anonymous.
I was simply not logged into Twitter and went to that same tweet and compared the replies side by side. I didn't do a very exhaustive analysis, but I'll tell you this, they weren't the same.
Could you see your tweet?
Yes.
You could see your tweet.
Yes.
Very, very interesting, though.
Worth doing some more research on.
You don't think Twitter could be manipulating something? You don't think Twitter could be?
Well, no. The way they would say that is they're keeping it relevant to me. See, it's relevant because I only see the tweets that are supportive, or I should say, not supportive of her tweet, that are in dissent of her tweet. I saw no tweet in support of her tweet. And I just find that very odd because if there's that many conservatives that when a liberal says something, then the political landscape would be very different than it is. So I think that Twitter is filtering it to relevant things, things that are relevant to me, probably to put a cap on some of the boiling arguments that have gotten out of hand that ultimately, I hate to use the word causes, but creates an environment where they take disciplinary action against either one or both. And I think they're trying to back up. So they're trying to just throw ice water on it, I guess. I don't know.
I guess that's why generally the only thing that trends on Twitter these days are TV shows.
Television and sports.
And sports.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that they're trying to put distance on the political context because it's so volatile and all the mess is a result of a polarized political landscape. Of course, we think it's all on our side. I think if you studied it, there's some liberals that are not happy too.
Oh yeah. Mark, I want to talk a little bit because
I interrupted you. You were going to say something. The pillow guy. Yeah. Could you repeat? Could you repeat the last part of that question, please? I didn't understand that.
Well, first of all, Lindell,
could we take
about running?
Could we take a recess? I think I have gas on my stomach. Could we? What page are you referring to, sir? What?
Okay. Well. First of all, we got to research that district and see what the Dem to Republican ratio is, and see whether Lindell has a shot. One thing I do know about that district is that during from what I'm reading, during the Obama administration, about 75,000 Somali Americans, refugees, were so-called, were relocated to Minnesota, and about 50,000 of them in that district. Now, ostensibly, most of them would not be citizens and would not be voting, but it is interesting that a Somalian Muslim has been elected from that district.
Well,
and
she is coming under more and more heat that appears. Some of this is starting to appear credible, and I don't toss that word around easily, but they're referring to documents, and I think that she is. I don't think they'll do anything right away. They'll wait for the right time. But if they spring that trap, she's toast.
Oh, I know.
If any portion of that is true, all of it doesn't have to be true. If any part of it is true, there is so much more substance to that than the constant drumbeat of collusion and obstruction and interference.
No, there absolutely is.
Yeah.
There, but in her tweet, she brought up Americans' student loan debt, and there's something I want to touch on about that I want to hit our liberals over the head with and make our conservatives aware of how the liberals view these things. Of course, we all agree that when you borrow money, it's your responsibility to pay it back. We all know about paths like the military and hard work and all kinds of ways that you can keep from getting into student loan debt in the first place. But they always want to blame the evil corporate banks on the person who foolishly goes into student loan debt or who goes into excessive student loan debt. Getting a degree in basket weaving and having $100,000 in student loan debt. First of all, it is liberals and their policies, okay, that pressured banks to make these loans, and then also their policy of guaranteeing those loans federally so that the banks would also be willing to make such loans. But there's a different set of corporations out there that liberals don't talk about. Liberals like to talk about the big banks. They like to talk about big oil, but they don't like to talk about big U.
Mm-hmm.
And by big U, I mean the universities, who have counselors that ostensibly are supposed to be counseling these students, okay, academically, career-wise, this, that, the other. Mark, I know a woman in New Orleans, God bless her. She's a troubled soul. And she graduated college young. But she went the wrong way in life, ended up with a lot of problems. And at about 55 years old, looking about 70 and having no teeth, but being sober, Tulane University allowed her to enter into a master's degree in architecture program. And she attended for 2 years, and she got this master's, and she became an architect at about 57 years old, and she's about $80,000 in debt. Mark, 57-year-old women with no teeth who look like they're 70, who spent years on the street, can't get hired by professional firms to be an architect. And I happened to mention the story to my sister, who's very liberal, and she started yelling about how the bank shouldn't have loaned her the money. I said, the bank didn't know what she looked like. The bank doesn't know about her troubled past and all of that stuff that the university does. And the university wanted to make that money. Okay, the university wants those funds coming in from those banks, and they're the ones that encouraged her to do that and encouraged her even though she was at a point in life where realistically she wasn't going to be getting hired by anybody as an architect. And we see this again and again and again with the big universities. Harvard charges a ridiculous amount of money, overpays their professors by an absurd amount of money, overpays their administrators by an absurd amount of money, and has a big enough endowment, Mark. Their interest off their endowment brings them more money than tuition does every year. Okay, so I just want to bring up that when we talk about student loans and the problem of student loans, that I blame Big U long before I blame the banks on this issue. I don't know what your opinion is on this.
Well, you can go down another level, okay? Just economics. Anything that is subsidized, the price is going
up.
Okay? If it, look at medical costs, well, it's subsidized by insurance. Look at veterinary, well, compare veterinary cost to...
Much lower.
Right, because it's, for the most part, uninsured. But if you subsidize anything, the price will go up. That's just inherent in the equation. But I just find it odd that, in fact, one reply pointed out and that there's no such thing as canceling the debt. You can transfer it.
Right. There's no such thing as free. No such thing as canceled debt.
Right. It's just transferred to the taxpayers because we are the guarantors. We're the co-signers of those notes. And I didn't agree to co-sign it, but the law is, by consent, I guess. But it is a disaster, but it's just another in a parade of liberal disasters that may have been, I don't want to say a good idea, but I understand the compassion. But you got to think with your head, not in front of your heart. Okay, they both need to be there.
let's look at it from another angle.
Well intentioned was the phrase I was looking for.
Over 70% of Americans do not graduate from college. Okay.
Well, did you know that some 70% of those student loans, the people never got their degrees? Those are the ones that are defaulting the highest.
The highest, okay. And a lot of that is, well, first of all, the point that I was going to make is that we shouldn't make the people who didn't go to college, who went to trade school or did something else, and who are raising their kids and paying their bills, pay the bills for the people who decided to go to college. That is fundamentally unfair, first of all. Why should somebody who doesn't go to college pay someone else's college tuition? That's fundamentally unfair. But again,
well, if you use that argument, why do property taxes pay for the public schools if you don't have a kid in school?
Well, you can take it there. I wouldn't necessarily be, completely philosophically opposed to that argument. But anyway, but there's that part of the issue. But no, the other thing is, you bring up the point, it's mostly people who didn't graduate. Mark, when I was going to college in Natchitoches, Louisiana, at Northwestern State University, Louisiana, I was taking a freshman level psychology class. And I noticed that the teacher was just lecturing directly from the book and teaching directly from the book. Mm-hmm. The study guide wasn't introducing new material. So after not going to class for about 3 weeks, I showed up for the first test and aced the test. Mm-hmm. And then I showed up to get my test results and to get my A because I had been studying. And there was a kid in the class who's like, man, you never come to class. How'd you get an A? And he had gotten a D on his test. And, I agreed to help him study and to work with him a little bit. Mark, NSU had 4, not just 2. They had 4 remedial English classes. They had 4 levels of remedial math. This kid was in first semester remedial English and in first semester remedial math, which essentially means he was getting 7th and 8th grade English and 7th and 8th grade math. Now, I don't have a problem with schools offering things like this, but this is a college. And this kid's going into student loan debt. And meanwhile, they're letting him take a psychology course that the book was written on the level of your typical college freshman. He couldn't read the book, Mark. Mm-hmm. He couldn't read this. He was very proud of himself for being the first in his family to go to college, but I could see the writing on the wall. It's like, not college material, not going to graduate, debt's going to be in debt. If he is college material, but just behind the times, he should be taking nothing but remedial math and remedial English courses until he finishes those. Let him get through, okay, his 4 remedial maths and his 4 remedial English. Because guess what? If he tries to take a science class, he's going to have to know the math. For every class that he takes, he's going to have to be able to read the book and understand and comprehend what the book is saying. But no, these colleges are perfectly happy to bring these people in, let them take out these huge student loans. They flunk out a couple of years later. They're in a tremendous amount of debt. Meanwhile, there are all kinds of decent jobs making $15, $20, $25 an hour in this country that have openings right now because people don't have the skills to do them. These people should be being funneled, pushed towards trade schools in order to get these types of jobs, not going into deep debt, going to 4-year institutions.
When you go to borrow money to buy a car, let's say, the bank in most cases requires a down payment. And there's more than one reason, but what's one of the reasons? You have something to lose if it gets repossessed.
You got some skin in the game, yeah.
There you go. Now, what if instead of just offering a free ride, saying, here, we'll say, you put up 20% or 10% or something, but they're just handing out money like they were handing out Obama phones. Okay, to go to school. And actually what that does is deflates the value of a college degree if you get one. They're turning out college degrees like sausages. So
they're turning out college degrees like sausages, and it is absolutely, totally ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it sets these young people up for failure in life.
Well, why don't some of these big corporations offer scholarships? The whole thing is to be ready, workforce ready. We'll let the workforce participate. Why should we be paying to train the workforce for the bigger corporations? I had a request that we kind of keep things brief tonight, but also we are recording this so that we can make highlights. Wanted to give you a few minutes for a last word if you had some.
Well, Mark, thanks for putting the pressure on me and making me nervous that you're telling me, okay, now give me the best that you got so that I can make this great, big, wonderful, wonderful highlight.
I will make even you look good. Okay. It's out of 28 minutes or so, I will find 45 seconds. It's actually only 38 seconds of stuff. So all we got to find is 38. And it might be me instead of you. You never know.
There you go. There you go. Whether it was the talk of reliving the Admiral Stockdale experience as James Comey testified, or My Pillow becoming my congressman, or the evils of Big Hugh, I think we had a pretty interesting talk tonight. I'm looking forward to being, hopefully by next week, certainly by the following, to being in my own bunker with my own high-speed internet instead of having to travel around from bunker to bunker.
Well, plus you're very limited on access to information with just a phone.
Right.
It's good that you have that, but nothing like a good desktop or a laptop. You know what I mean? And
nothing like it.
They're out there.
Well, Mark, what?
We're good, and hey, appreciate you doing this. I know that it's more of a sacrifice for you than for others because you have a tail of a headwind that you're running against, but you do it gracefully. You carry the load well, and it's always a pleasure, Refugee. And I can't wait until next week because we're going to sizzle.
I'll try and shave the sexy mug for next week's show.
And get some better headgear. Yep.
All right.
All right, man. Appreciate it. All right, folks. Refugee from the great state of Louisiana. That was an interesting conversation. We've had many such interesting conversations, and it's great that we can share here on PJNet Live. Now, Hazards, get your finger on the trigger because we are about to unleash some tunes. Hazards 4 is going to be our video host as we continue with PJNet Live.